There's no way your video is like gonna get monetized, is it?
I'm gonna try my absolute f***ing hardest.
Talking about no and money laundering.
Listen,
No shot to get monetized in the entirety of history.
Every now and then, like most people, I like to go on Steam and browse the front page, you know, just to see what new games they've got going on. Because every now and then, a hidden gem will show up here and change your life forever. But every time I do this, it doesn't take much scrolling before I encounter a game like this. These games seem to plague the front page of Steam. They are literally everywhere. I've never bought one of these games, nor have I ever played a game that Steam could maybe consider similar to these games. In fact, Steam literally gives you the ability to click this little icon and choose ignore. But no matter how many times you click ignore on the Boobie games, they still seem to show up. And for as long as I leave my Steam preferences unchanged, games like these will somehow inexplicably shoot to the top of the new and trending tab at least once a week. Now, to you, this might seem completely innocuous. It's just people making and buying weird-ass games on Steam. But when I see this, I see something more than that. I see a conspiracy. Because you never actually hear anyone talking about these games, nor do you ever see anyone playing them. They make absolutely no noise whatsoever. And yet multiple of them, every single week, appear at the very tippy top of the new and trending page on Steam. Boobie games with 11 reviews sitting next to The Elder Scrolls Online and a new Amnesia game. So I decided to put on my detective glasses and start investigating. I want to get to the bottom of this, because I think there's more to this than meets the eye. But if I want to research Boobie games on Steam, then of course I actually have to play some Boobie games on Steam. You know, for science. So I bought 3 of them, and I'm now going to be the one guy on the internet who is willing to give an actual honest review of Boobie games on Steam. And in the effort of trying to actually have this video be monetized, I'm going to have to censor a lot of stuff in this video. So to do that, I'm going to enlist the help of a little friend of mine. His name's Reggie. Tell him he's handsome. Now, every time there's something I can't show on screen, Reggie's gonna jump in and cover up whatever degeneracy would otherwise be there. You know, just to lighten the mood a little bit. So everyone say hello to Reggie, because you'll be seeing a lot of him in this video.
Reggie, come here. Reggie, come here, Reggie. Oh,
So the first game I played was called... This game is like the world's worst visual novel. It's essentially a slideshow of still images, just screenshots of 3D models posed against flat backgrounds, with dialogue posted at the bottom of the screen. The whole selling point of the game is the fact that it has boobies in it, right? Yet there's this hilariously cliche teenage angst story in there too, with the self-insert male character getting like kicked out of his house by his dad because of a new girlfriend or whatever. It's hilarious. Like, they know the exact type of person that they are marketing this game towards. And every now and then, it would get to a, you know, good part. There'd be a small amount of really simplistic animation, but for the most part, even in these parts, the moment everyone's been waiting for, it's just screenshots of naked people. It's just screenshots with stock music playing in the background. You'd click and it would progress through the screenshots to like different poses or whatever. And that's literally the entire game. There's a really crude story and the women's dialogue makes them talk like no woman has ever talked in the history of the human race. And there are like visual novel style choices, but the only difference those choices makes is which character you get to see naked, and that's it. It's incredibly low effort. So much so that it stands out above anything else, even the boobies. It's something that someone with a small amount of game engine experience could make in a very short amount of time. Just taking assets that, hi Reggie, just taking assets that already exist off of the internet and reusing them, and writing the world's worst dialogue for them just so that you can call it a game and then ship it to Steam. And the next game I played was pretty much the exact same thing. First of all, this one gets a 10 out of 10 for me, just for the title alone. Like, it's literally the perfect title. Look at how descriptive it is. But despite the title, this game is basically the exact same thing as the last one. It's just screenshots of characters on backgrounds with visual novel dialogue at the bottom. Although this one had, like, a crude combat system, which is funny, I guess. There was combat encounters with a few choices to make, where you, like, bash a goblin in the head. It's still insanely simplistic, and looks like the whole game could have been made in 2 days, but, you know, at least it's still trying its hardest. The thing that struck me the most is just how much effort it was to play. If you're the type of person who wants to buy a Boobie game on Steam, then chances are the only reason you bought it is to, you know, look at the boobies. But it took me a good 10 minutes of pure spam clicking, not even reading the text, just to get to the part with some boobies in it. Like, this seems like way too much effort for someone to unironically play it just for the parts where you get to look at naked people. Although, funnily enough, after that 10 minutes of spam clicking, I reached this part here where it gives me an option to say no. And I thought that was absolutely amazing. Go upstairs with her and have sex. What if I just... Nah, I don't think I will. This game is simultaneously higher effort and lower effort than the last one, all at the same time. Like, it's mostly not even 3D models from the looks of it, and the backgrounds are much more simplistic, and the animations of the parts that everybody came to see are incredibly janky. But it also has a fantasy theme going on, with a weird-ass combat system. Like, it's trying harder in some ways, and then in other ways it's not trying at all. But again, it seems like the sort of game that a person with the right experience could cobble together in a couple of days and fart out onto Steam. A visual novel with really, really terrible dialogue that basically plays out like a complicated PowerPoint slideshow. But the final game I played was at least trying to be something different from that. Something other than a visual novel. A game that I was hoping would be a breath of fresh air. Master, you can just walk up to the bed and press a button. Oh. It wasn't a breath of fresh air. The game was trying to be like a zombie shooter for some reason, but a zombie shooter that also has, you know, boobies in it. You know what's funny though, is that this one was actually really difficult to actually find the boobies in. Like, it's also a ton of effort to just see the thing that you'd think would have made you buy the game in the first place. There's this comical prompt here, and you can also go to like a VCR player and put a tape in and watch some naughty things on TV. But other than that, I literally couldn't find anything else. I know other things existed because I saw it on the game's Steam store page, but it was incredibly difficult to find any of it. In fact, just progressing through the game was an enormous pain in the ass. You have to search this dark-ass house for like a gun or whatever before you can leave, and I couldn't find the gun. So I just skipped ahead to the next level, and the game didn't give me the gun still, but the game was now spawning zombies that were trying to kill me, so I just got bashed by the zombies constantly, and I couldn't do anything about it. But when you get to 0 HP, the game gives you a quick time event instead of just killing you, and it does this an infinite number of times in a row, so you can't actually die as long as you don't fail the button presses. But without the gun, the zombies could just pin me in a corner forever with nothing I could do about it, but I actually can't die as long as I keep pressing buttons. Also, the zombie sound effects that were used in the game are directly ripped out of Call of Duty Zombies. Wait, it's using COD zombie noises. Like, it's completely shameless. They just stole the sound effect and used it for themselves. Not to mention the constant royalty-free music that plagues this game, as well as the previous 2 games I talked about. It's a constant onslaught of cliche royalty-free music that never goes away, which is yet another sign of being something that could have been made in a very short space of time. But this one is at least trying to be something other than a visual novel, but despite that, it's still incredibly simplistic, only has 3 levels, and yet again, could have been thrown together in a couple of days by a person with the right knowledge. The game is also incredibly buggy, literally clipping me into the floor at one point. The animations are all terrible, and the game mostly consists of walking around and picking things up off of desks. And it was actually the most boring of the 3 games by a lot, if that's a measure I'm even making. None of them were fun, really, but I can't. Like, it wasn't even funny bad most of the time, it was just bad. Like, genuinely, I really don't understand who would buy this and unironically play it. Like, the other 2 games were effort to play, but at least they're visual novels. Like, you can imagine a person that might enjoy some sort of roleplay element or whatever, but this one just doesn't make any sense. Where's the fun? And this leads me pretty nicely onto the next thing I want to talk about. Why? Why are there so many of these games getting made? And more importantly, why are they shooting up to the top of the new and trending page so frequently? Well, I've done some research, and I have 3 different guesses as to why this might be. And the first one is, of course, the most obvious. People are just degenerates. People are just buying these games and playing them a lot more than you would ever expect. And the reason you don't know about it is because of the shame people feel in admitting that they buy these games. You know, maybe these games are incredibly popular, but no one talks about it because they're embarrassed. But in my opinion, I don't think this is the real answer. It's pretty hard to conclusively prove wrong, but if you ask me, something just doesn't add up with this. There's no way to see how many sales a game has on Steam, because Steam does not release any of this information. So the best metric we have is Steam reviews. The number of reviews left is a good rough estimate to how many players have played the game. More popular games tend to have more reviews left, and almost all of these Boobie games have a very low number of reviews left on the page. But unfortunately, even this isn't a good metric in this example, because if people were ashamed to admit that they play these type of games, then they're definitely not going to be leaving public reviews on the games either. But the reason I don't believe that people actually play these games is much simpler than that. It's that these games are very low quality, but they require a high effort from the player to actually get what they want. If you're buying a game on Steam that has a name like this, that is advertised on Steam solely with the pictures of naked women, then chances are there's only one reason that you're buying and playing that game. But the game itself is incredibly low effort, all of the animations are incredibly janky, the models are low quality, and most of it consists of nothing but screenshots. Not only that, but just getting to the part of the game where there's boobies takes forever. In this game in particular, I was spam clicking for what felt like years before anything remotely naughty showed up at all. But if I go to Google and I type in booba, I get 17 jillion results instantly, and Googling it doesn't cost me a penny. Buying these games cost me nearly 30 quid. 30 quid for 3 games that were cobbled together in a day and farted out onto Steam's library that randomly shot up to the new and trending page. Now, I'm sure that there are some people out there who unironically buy and play games like these. I'm not so naive to assume that there's literally no one who has an interest in this. But there's just no way that that makes up nearly enough sales or active players to have the game show up in the new and trending tab. Because if you didn't know, the way this little tab right here actually works has been made public by Valve. 2 Valve employees actually talk about it here in this video that I've linked down in the description. It's essentially a list of the best-selling new releases in the last few weeks. Anything that came out in the last week or two that has sold a lot of copies, has a lot of active players, or has a lot of reviews on it. And it's just ordered newest to oldest. And we can use a little website called Steam Charts to actually look at the active player numbers of games on Steam, most of which are exceptionally low. All except for this one game, apparently. Because for some reason this one actually has players. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because it's older, or maybe because they're bots or something wild like that. Or maybe it's just that this one is unironically popular. But this one is an outlier, and you can check the Steam charts of a lot of Boobie games that show up here and see for yourself that the overwhelming majority of them have almost nobody playing them ever. Which is especially notable because these games show up side by side next to games like these, which have Steam charts numbers that look like this. Which essentially means that the only explanation for why these Boobie games are showing up in the new and trending tab is because they have lots of sales. But if its sales figures are so high, then why is nobody playing it? Well, one potential answer for this is Steam gifts. People often buy their friends dirty games like these as a joke gift on Steam, not actually expecting them to play it. This is a thing that happens, but I'd be willing to wager that it doesn't happen frequently enough to raise multiple Boobie games to the very top of the new and trending tab every single week of the year. But there is another explanation to this, one that seems wild at first glance, but I actually think is entirely plausible. I think these games are money laundering. Now, I know what you're thinking. Money laundering? Really? What? Isn't that a bit conspiratorial for a dumb Boobie game on Steam? Well, actually, you'd be surprised, because money laundering on Steam is actually a very real problem that Valve is publicly aware of. But first, just a quick simplified explanation of what money laundering actually is. Let's say I'm some sort of criminal and I make $100,000 illegally. But I can't just go to the bank and deposit my 100 grand because they'll be all like, hey, why do you have $100,000 in cash? And I can't admit to the person at the bank that I have a secret life as a hitman, so I can't deposit my money with them. So I need a way to turn that cash into legal money, so I can make it look like I earned the money legally, when in reality, I earned it by, you know, killing people for money or whatever. That's why Walter White in Breaking Bad buys a car wash. He can pretend his car wash had way more customers than it actually did, and he can tell the bank that that's where he got all of his money from, when in reality, it was the whole, you know, meth thing. And in the age of the internet, Steam can can be used to do this exact same thing. Before 2019, organized criminals used to buy CSGO keys with illegal funds on the Steam community market. They would then wait out the 7-day trade restriction and then sell these keys on third-party trading websites for real money put into their PayPal. That essentially allows them to take their cash, use it to buy a ton of Steam gift cards, then use those gift cards to buy keys, then sell those keys for money and tell their bank that they got all of their money selling virtual CSGO items, and it all looks above board to the bank and to the government. But Valve caught on to people doing this, so in 2019, Valve made all keys untradeable to try and prevent this. No trading keys between players and no selling them on the community market. But this didn't solve the issue. People just started buying expensive knives and selling those instead, which is basically the exact same thing. Buying and selling on the community market is always done at a loss, because Steam takes a percentage of anything sold on their market. But money laundering in general is also done at a loss, because you have to, you know, hire employees and pay rent and stuff at your fake car wash to launder money anyway. So losing just the amount the community market takes is actually pretty good. So where do the Boobie games come into this? Well, if you pay a guy to make you a shoddy Boobie game in a couple of days, and then you put that game on Steam for $10, you can then pay a bunch of people to use your illegal funds to buy that game on Steam. Steam takes a 30% cut on all sales made through their platform, but a 30% loss on laundering money ain't half bad in the grand scheme of things. And when the bank asks where you got your money from, you can tell them that it was your Boobie games that you made on Steam. Make multiple Boobie games in a row, and then it looks even more legit than that. This would quite easily explain away the low player counts of these games. They're showing up on new and trending because of their incredibly high sales figures, but nobody actually plays them because they're not being bought by players, but instead by mules trying to launder money on behalf of someone else. And it would also go a long way to explain the exceptionally low quality. They're not trying to make a good game, just a game that can be passable enough to get added to Steam. And if I were to hazard a guess, I'd imagine a lot of these games use ripped assets stolen from other games. 3D models and environments that are just ripped straight out of another game or downloaded from content libraries free on the internet, which makes the churning out of these video games even easier than it would seem on the surface. I mean, they've already shown that they can rip sound effects from other games, so why wouldn't they be able to rip other stuff too? As wild as the explanation sounds at first, money laundering is a problem that Steam has had to contend with for years, and other platforms have been having similar issues. In the age of the internet, this sort of thing is easier than ever, and Steam is a perfect place to house it. It's incredibly hard to trace and incredibly difficult for Steam to actually crack down on. Although there is another slightly less shady potential reason why these games are so common, and that's people trying to get rich quick. Someone with the right knowledge and a bunch of time on their hands could make dozens of these crazy low effort games and churn them out onto Steam. And they only need one of them to become popular to make a bit of money for their time spent. They don't need the game to be good, just to be eye-catching enough to bait enough people into buying it to make them a quick buck. This might do a good job at explaining why there's so many of these games, but it doesn't really do a good job at explaining why they're so commonly at the top of the trending tab, and why they never seem to have an actual player base to speak of. Because maybe if one of these snuck to the top of the trending tab every now and then this would be a good explanation. But it's a consistent thing. One or two of these games every single week jumps to the top of new and trending, and it seems way too common to just be a bunch of people trying to get rich quick. But it's certainly worth considering, because there are legitimate reasons for a normal person to buy a game like this. I mean, I don't know any normal people that would buy one of these, but you know, I can imagine one in my head. But besides all of that, there is one true reason that these games have become so prevalent, and that is Steam's content moderation policy. Every few weeks at Valve headquarters, they have a group meeting where they look over all the games that people have requested to be added to Steam. A while back, Valve's CEO, Gabe Newell, sat in on one of these meetings, and he reportedly said that Valve shouldn't ever restrict anything that isn't illegal, and personal taste should have nothing to do with their content moderation policy. They're not doing quality control, they're just a platform that sells games, whether they're good or bad. This philosophy right here, held by the CEO of the company, is the true reason why Steam has so many of these sorts of games. And if money laundering really is the culprit behind these games shooting to the top of the new and trending tab, then Valve's easiest course of action to prevent this would be to have better curation on their site. Try and do at least a tiny bit of quality quality control and it would stomp out a large number of these games. And it would at least force money launderers to get creative with how they go about it on their platform. But to be honest, I'm super interested in what you guys think. Tell me in the comments whether you think my theory is correct or whether I'm just being crazy. Because I tried to get to the bottom of this myself, but without Valve's input, it's impossible to determine the true reason behind the prevalence of these games. But maybe in the meantime, we can do a little bit of theorizing about it anyway. Thanks for watching.